Good afternoon. Welcome to the March 25th Rotary meeting. Please silence your cell phones if you haven't already, as Greg comes up as a Rotarian of the day. Do the prayer, pledge, and four-way test.
Well, I'm not a spiritual person, so in place of prayer, I'll offer this. We're grateful for food and we'll remember the hungry. We're grateful for health and we'll remember the sick. We're grateful for friends and we'll remember the friendless. May these remembrances inspire us to greater service through Rotary. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In the four-way test, first, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better justice? And fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? And fifth.
Thank you, Greg. As you sit down, don't forget those blue buckets for Alzheimer's research. And Jim, do you want to introduce your visitor?
I have my guest today, my oldest son, graduated from Rotary in May. He's shadowing with me this week. God bless him for it. I paid him a good meal today.
Okay, thank you. Any prayer requests, William?
I have a guest.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I was going to introduce her later.
Okay. Well, good. Well, now.
William? No, okay. Any other prayer requests? All right, so today, as you've just found out, Kara is joining us from the Exchange Club. She's here to sell tickets for the Exchange Club. They didn't have their regular fundraiser this year, so they're actually having some trouble with their finances. So she's going to sell $5 tickets to win a $1,000 prize. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And we're going to give her a couple minutes right now to sell some tickets.
Oh, that's no pressure. But yes, I am with the Exchange Club, and we usually host the Bunko Tournament, which is our biggest fundraiser of the year. But of course, with COVID, we've had to cancel it for 2020 as well as 2021. We have decided to postpone it for right now. And we usually also have a pancake breakfast, but we were not able to hold that. So we've done one raffle earlier at the end of last year. Jennifer Pollard actually won $1,000 for that raffle, and then we're doing this one as well to help us raise money. So our mission in the Exchange Club is child abuse prevention is what we really focus on. So if y'all have any want to buy some tickets, I have them. They are 1 for $5 or 5 for $20, and the drawing will be next Thursday. April 1st already. Wow. So next Thursday will be the drawing. So you don't have to get your money ready, but then afterwards I can help sell tickets for y'all. So, yeah. Thank you. I appreciate you letting us know.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Okay, Aaron, you want to introduce our guest?
Okay, so today I get to introduce an old friend. I don't know if most of y'all know, but I've had a career in the newspaper for 14 years, and that's where I met him. He is now the executive director of the Downtown Development Authority. No, help me out here.
Development Authority of Milledgeville, Baldwin County.
Development Authority of Milledgeville, Baldwin County. So welcome, Jonathan Jackson.
I'm really glad to be here. Thank you all. I actually showed up last week to speak, and was the wrong week. And so it's been a fun week. I've gotten to know most of the staff and worked on my putting game. We'll give you a little bit of background. I met Aaron at the newspaper. I met Keith Barlow at the newspaper, and I just wanted to say that I'm really happy to be in the same room with both of them and not be in trouble for something. So that's a little bit on our history. But so economic development, everybody hears about it, and I'd like to shed a little bit of light. So what I'm prepared to do is to tell you everything about every project that we're working right now. No, I'm kidding. So that sort of lends itself to one of the main points of what I'd like to talk to you about today, and that is what some people perceive to be secrecy that I would contend is more along the lines of privacy. So when companies come to us, a lot of times they don't want to be identified, and we have to keep that to ourselves so that their cover's not blown. There are many reasons for that. Sometimes they're coming from another community within the state, and they don't want that community to yet know that they've had to make this decision or making a decision to relocate. That would apply to other states in the country. And then sometimes for competitive reasons, they don't want other companies that they compete against to know what they're up to. So we keep those secrets. We respect their privacy is more like it. So every county in Georgia and most cities will have an economic development effort. In Milledgeville, Baldwin County, we've got 4 efforts. We've got the Development Authority of Milledgeville, Baldwin County, which I represent. We have a joint development authority with Wilkinson County, and that is a special purpose group that works to promote the intersection of US 441 and the Fall Line Freeway. That authority owns 3 of the 4 corners, 470 acres. That has a lot of potential, and hopefully as it continues to grow, we'll get some attraction there. Then we've got our Downtown Development Authority, which I'm sure you're all aware of, that works with our Main Street, out of our Main Street organization. And then you've got the Central State Local Redevelopment Authority, which is specifically tasked with the redevelopment of the Central State campus. We work in conjunction with all of those partners and stakeholders. We do what we can for each other. I've got, I think, 3 meetings next week that are in conjunction with Central State Local Redevelopment Authority. So we try to keep those efforts aligned and try to work and play nice with each other, and we usually always do. So our focus is mainly on industrial projects. We will do some large-scale commercial and some large-scale retail. For example, Kroger was a project that was worked with the Development Authority of Milledgeville, Baldwin County. But our efforts are mainly geared towards 2 factors: high investment dollars and high job creation. Those are sort of the qualifiers, which take a bird's eye view, the qualifiers that make the industrial aspect of our development authority want to get engaged. So the mission of every development authority is to attract business and to grow business. So the attraction part is really enticing, and that's where you go out and you recruit these big companies to come in, and you know, offer them the world, and it's fun to chase them. That's not my favorite kind of economic development. My favorite kind of economic development is the existing industry expansion. There are a couple of reasons for that, because these businesses already have skin in the game in our community, and those expansions don't cost the same thing. You're not giving away a whole lot of incentives or tax abatement to attract them. So I really am a big fan of existing industry expansion. So in order to accomplish these goals, we have a group of stakeholders that we work with. We have project managers on the state level that work with the Georgia Department of Economic Development. And these are the folks that will send in a prospect to our community to try and see if we can locate them here. In addition to the project managers on the state level with the Department of Economic Development, all of our utilities also have project managers that work in conjunction with that group also to bring them in. You've probably, some of you I know have been involved in this before, but you probably remember a man by the name of Jim Lovett that works for Georgia Power. Jim is formerly our representative for this area for economic development. He's been realigned with the way that the economic development territories have been drawn up, and now our new project manager for Georgia Power is a gentleman by the name of Matt Forshee. And so in addition to the utilities, we also have professional site selection consultants. And these folks do nothing but try to find sites for companies. They are pretty high profile. It's honestly a pretty hard nut to crack to get into the world of professional site selection consultants, but they specifically will seek out sites based on a company's parameters and needs. We also work with commercial real estate brokers, and so they will bring us projects sometimes. And one of the things that they help us with a lot is our homegrown projects. Not every project comes from the state. Not every project comes from an inquiry. Sometimes we get local commercial real estate developers that will bring us something that we want to work with. So I mentioned before that I have a past in the newspaper industry. I worked at the Union Recorder 3 different times. Worked for the Telegraph, Courier Herald, a couple other local area newspapers. But one thing that I learned in that industry was that it was strongly centered in relationships and building relationships and maintaining good relationships. Now, I promise you, you work for a newspaper long enough, you're going to make pretty much everybody angry at some point. It just comes with the territory. But the relationship aspect, I wasn't expecting to translate into economic development. But boy, did I find out quickly that economic development is also a relationship industry. Answer to a board of directors, and I maintain good relationships with them. I hope, Derek, that we maintain good relationships, and I know we've got a couple watching also. But in addition to our board members, we also work with elected officials on the county and city level. We work with state elected officials. And it's essential to keep those communication lines open and to keep those relationships solvent and good. So, as I said before, part of that is this comparison or this nuance between secrecy and privacy. It is incumbent on any of us in this industry to keep our stakeholders as informed as possible. That doesn't mean that I can divulge exactly who's looking or who's wanting to come here. And I hope to goodness that you don't ever read about projects in the newspaper before they're announced, but sometimes that does happen. I sort of gathered or started that understanding of that nuance with a mentor of mine who used to be here. She's a predecessor, but you remember Angie Giesling. And so we worked with Angie constantly on economic development projects. And we'd hear little bits and pieces, and I know you've all heard little bits and pieces of projects that may be coming here. But Angie helped me understand the importance of maintaining that privacy for these companies that are looking at our community. And I hope that I've been able to carry that forward. So newspaper reporting obviously is the dissemination of correct information, and it relies on those relationships. Economic development also carries that aspect of disseminating correct information and maintaining relationships. And like I said, I was so surprised to find that that those two things were so related. Wasn't looking for a job in economic development, but I found myself in one. And it's been a really good fit for me. I'm about 8-9 years in now. And one of the biggest challenges that I've faced is that, like the Boy Scouts, the mission of economic development is to be prepared. So a lot of time is spent getting prepared and getting ready for that project that comes here, because they want as many boxes checked off as possible. I promise you, you grease the rails, you've got a better chance of landing your project. I wanted to dig in just a little bit on that, because that process of getting ready is the thrust of what economic development is. I think people sometimes believe that the announcements and the ribbon cuttings and the groundbreaking, that's economic development. That is economic growth. Economic development is everything it takes to get to that point. And a lot of it's behind the scenes, and a lot of it you're never going to hear about. But you have empowered a group of people in the community to push us toward that goal, and that's what we do. So this is an elevator speech line. It's often repeated and it's hilarious. So I expect just tons of laughter afterward. But if you ask a liberal what I do, I dole out corporate welfare. If you ask a conservative what I do, I generate jobs and create wealth. And so the answer somewhere in the middle of that, honestly. 80% of the people in this country are in the middle of that. So that's where the answer lies as to what I do. But I do try to help create jobs, and I do try to help build the tax digest and create wealth. And I find a lot of pride and satisfaction in helping people get to work. I think that when you can do that, you can empower people to change their lives and really make a difference in their community. So when a stakeholder brings us projects, 9 times out of 10, they're coming with a great idea. Unfortunately, they're not always coming with a great amount of money. And that poses a challenge for us sometimes to help them get started. But even so, in the midst of this terrible, hectic, odd year where we've had to basically redefine how we all work, we have had 35 to 40 projects come to Milledgeville, Baldwin County and make an inquiry about our community. That represents more than 5,000 jobs and more than $500 million in investment. Now, are we going to land those 5,000 jobs and that $500 million in investment? Of course we're not. That's not how it works. The vast majority of projects don't materialize anywhere. Even if it comes from the state with a project name and a code name, chances are that it's not going to make. So our job is to create a space where it's more likely that that project can materialize. We attract companies primarily through the offer of real estate and tax abatement, which is tax discounts, those types of incentives. So having construction-ready sites is really essential. There are two things that are in extreme lack right now in the state of Georgia. The availability of mega sites, which it would be a site over 1,500 acres, and the availability of spec buildings. I am terrified to build a spec building. I'll go on the record and say that because they have to be refinanced so many times, and it's a little bit humbling to have to go with your hat in your hand to your elected officials every so often and ask for a refinance on a spec building if it doesn't sell. So I mentioned mega site, our Sibley Smith site that you've probably seen discussions about. It's over 1,600 acres and it's on the US 441 bypass. That site is GRAD certified, which it stands for Georgia Ready for Accelerated Development. And that site has had a lot of vetting done for it already. And so that hopefully will check a few boxes to attract a big project to that site. And that's our goal, is to move that forward. However, closer look we take at tax abatement or anything like that, it almost always comes down to the site. I landed a project in a former life one time because it was closer to the CEO's house than another site. So it really comes down to the site. There are so many different factors, but the site tends to be the predominant and most important factor. We'll talk a little bit about the trends that we're seeing. That's a little bit of an interesting thing. Primarily, we're getting inquiries about industrial projects. That's the gist of what we're seeing. We're seeing a lot of interest in film. There's more filming going on in Georgia right now than ever before, even in the middle of the pandemic. So we're working with those. And we see a lot of agribusiness inquiries, particularly wood and fiber. So those are some areas that we're seeing a lot of activity. So I've already sort of stressed the difference between privacy and secrecy, and I'm wrapping up just in case anybody needs to know to get ready. But one of the things that I would point out is that that privacy is essential to these companies. When a community is identified as a prospective location, about 75% of the work is already done and we didn't even know it, because that 75% of the work is the vetting process. They've come to our town, they probably visited our town, they've read our newspapers, they've read our social media, they've done all these things to try to get an idea of what our community is like. And so I'm gonna close with this challenge to you. That's where we all come in as economic development practitioners. Your negative stories are going to happen. They're going to be disseminated. Your positive ones are harder to disseminate. So when you get the opportunity to, talk about a positive experience you've had in our town, take that opportunity, do it. Make a social media post, have those conversations in public, because those positive stories are what help us attract these folks. I promise you the negative takes care of itself. So I actually have a policy. I don't engage in negative stories on social media. I just don't do it because I never know who's looking over my shoulder. And so when these companies want to get an idea of what we have to offer, they're going to have the negative available for them. my job and your job, I hope, is to help us get that positive available for them. So that's my challenge to you all, to help us in our economic development efforts by promoting the good and the positive things about our community, because it really does make a difference. So that's all I've really got to say to you. So I thought I would take a couple of minutes and answer questions if anybody has any.
You may not know this, but somebody's building a mega facility about 15 miles east of the Greensboro exit. I mean, it's a massive warehouse of some kind. Do you have any idea who that is?
I've got a vague recollection of that.
Is that a secret or not a secret?
It probably is neither if it's under construction. It probably has had some type of announcement or groundbreaking. I'm just not familiar with what it is. However, I could find out for you.
I mean, it's massive. I don't know if it's Amazon or who it is.
Well, so there's a mega site.
Excuse me? Yeah, towards Augusta. On the left side.
A procurement center.
Who I couldn't hear you.
There.
Just a comment. Economic development is, I love what Jonathan said about relationships, engineered to relationships, and how that business transfers over, because it is about relationships, particularly in a town like ours. And even as Development Authority board members, we don't see a lot of these people face to face. Jonathan, now, eventually we will when it gets close, but in the early stages, this is the person they contact, the person they talk to. And I've seen Jonathan with economic development prospects, and I've seen the job that he does building relationships with them, talking with them. So yes, you do have a good relationship with your board, and yes, we're very, very fortunate to have Jonathan and those volunteering.
Thank you, Derek. I appreciate that. Terry?
This may not be a question you can answer, but with the Triumph highs and lows, do you know anything where we're going with that? I mean, there's a lot of layoffs, and now we're down to 200 people, and we hear about. So, is there anything you can share about that?
I can tell you that my personal feelings about where we're headed are not entirely negative. And the official line for me is this is a developing situation, which leaves it a little open-ended. I'm sorry, I can't give you anything more concrete, but I don't want to misspeak, but I don't have completely negative feelings about where I think things are headed. So. Yes.
When the company's looking at us, how big is the quality of life issue in this country? I mean, is it sometimes a game changer for what people are looking for? And we have land, a lot of people have land.
Yes.
But the other, I know I was involved in another community. We were down with a big company. We lost in Athens because of quality of life, what they were offering. The six-figure salary they were coming in quality to Atlanta and other things we couldn't offer. Is that a big deal?
It's a very, very big deal. So one of our biggest attributes is our proximity to the lake country. And so a lot of times companies that are planning to move in will ask me for information about the lakes because they envision that as a place where they will house their senior management. So yes, lakes are big. The cultural offerings that Georgia College brings to us are big. You know, as the largest economic driver in Milledgeville, Baldwin County, the college consistently is something that is discussed with these prospects because they like the idea of being that close to an academic institution of that magnitude, and they like the ancillary things that that type of institution brings to the community. So yes, absolutely.
I think that energy too of GMC and Georgia College, all the education stuff we've got going on in downtown area, that energy of just students moving around and everything makes for a nice lunch downtown for these guys.
It does, and the thing is, I always include Georgia College and GMC on the tours.
Yeah.
And GMC, people gasp when they see the campus. I mean, it's just so phenomenal, and they love the idea of being in a community that's got that type of educational opportunity, especially with that GMC and Georgia College both have. Yeah.
Years back, everybody, I mean, and I don't remember still, but I know years back, with the port expanding, the drive was to get something in Milledgeville that was related to the port and stuff up here, like sites, to bypass. Now, I guess that's with the rail system, all that, it's kind of past us and everything's going further north. It doesn't make sense to put it on a truck, just truck it, I'm 3 hours up, so what is, I guess, is there something else you're looking, other industries you're looking at, for these sites? We, kind of originally thought we were going to get some of the port business from.
Well, inland ports, I think, is what you're referring to. Inland ports are great. They're designed to alleviate congestion at the Port of Savannah. And so what the Port of Savannah has done in the last few years is they really beefed up their rail presence to make the containers easy to get onto a train. And by the way, if you've never toured the Port of Savannah, go now. It's amazing. It will blow your mind. But the idea was to get those containers out of the port, off that exit, out of there as soon as possible, take them to Cordele, take them up to North Georgia, and disseminate from there. They bring with them a few jobs. They don't bring a lot of investment dollars. They really don't, because it doesn't take much to have the yard. I think that the biggest investment comes in the creation of the rail spur that is required for that sort of thing. So those things have, everybody was chasing that for a while. They've sort of identified the sectors that they really need to be in the state based on the traffic that they've got. So I think that what I'm going to do is segue from that to the importance of rail. There is another thing that Georgia's short on, and that is sites that are served by railroads. We've got an attribute, a Norfolk Southern line running right through Milledgeville, Baldwin County that's very important and is good, and we need to keep it, and we need to keep it going. So we do try to send our prospects that need rail access to that Sibley Smith site that does have that rail frontage, but it's hugely important. Rail is.
I have another question. I'm just curious about this. My son graduated from GMC, and they had the graduation out at, I don't know what it's called, the mental health facility.
Central State Hospital?
Yeah. The state hospital, whatever it's called. And I'm just amazed at how big that place is out there. It's all just shut down. Has anybody ever thought about, reclaiming that land and doing something with that? You could build a city out there.
Well, there is a development authority specifically tasked with rebuilding that campus. It's the Central State Local Redevelopment Authority, and they're partners of ours. So if I have a project that is looking for an existing building, and let's just say it is in the medical field, I will contact my partner out there, Mike Couch, and we'll say, hey, do we have a fit for this project? And we'll steer them out there to try to do that. They've had some success in locating some places out there, some facilities. And so we work hand in hand with them to try to steer them to the right direction. Likewise, if they have a project that needs a lot of land and they don't have space for it, they'll give us a call, because I want the project to locate with the Development Authority of Milledgeville, Baldwin County first. If it's not a fit, I want it in Baldwin County second. And if that's not a fit, I want it in our region. And if that's not a fit, I want it in our state. But those are how my priorities are aligned. So that is something that we do, is we work well together.
Some of those buildings just need to be torn down. They're just dilapidated. Right, your representative did express that to them.
That costs a lot of money then.
Yeah, but right, the state of Georgia. We've been trying to get them to take them down.
You can talk to Jeff Gray about the asbestos in each one of those buildings.
Well, there's still
firsthand experience in dealing with that.
Even with the condition, that there's still such a huge asset there that I think that it's correct to try and work that renovation and that redevelopment of that campus. I think a lot of us that are long timers in Milledgeville remember when Central State Hospital was in its heyday. It was its own city. They had their own post office. It was a little city. Hardwick was a booming place. And so I think that sometimes we get caught up in wanting to return to those glory days. We're not going to get there through simply state investment in that property. So redevelopment is the path to take for that, and I'm happy to see it's going well.
And some of those old buildings can possibly be torn down from the back and leave a 3 or 4 foot facade, I think, on the front of them, and actually attract some tax credits for development on it. Isn't that right? So,
Say that again, I couldn't hear.
So he's talking about, it's a process called safe demolition, where you would sort of take the guts out of a building and leave the facade and work from inside out. There's an example of that in Macon over at the old Quisby School on Vineville, or Hardeman. I'm not sure which road it is, but they did that. They took the guts of the building out, left the facade, but leaving the facade and leaving the historical texture there can sometimes open the door for some credits, tax credits that can go
I
towards.
think they do that a lot in Savannah.
There's an asbestos cost with all that. I think that's the
There is a cost, but I'll be honest with you, it's not something that I'm terribly afraid of. Engineering helps us. All right. Thank you all.
President Peter asked that I close us out here. Any questions or comments? I can't answer any of the questions, so hopefully y'all can.
I just want to say, it was so good to see Brad Oliver and Chandler with
Both distinguished honorary Rotary.
Thank y'all. Jonathan, thank you for coming today. We have a tradition. We just started. You get a pen.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
You can write with it and everything. All right, with that, I think we're adjourned.